Welcome to Kuma English Listening Hub. In today's episode, we are going to explore a surprising trend in modern cities: tiny forests. You might imagine forests as huge green areas, far away from skyscrapers and traffic. But in many cities around the world, people are planting forests on very small pieces of land, sometimes no bigger than a tennis court. These small, dense woodlands are called tiny forests, and they are changing the way we think about nature and urban life. In the next 10 minutes, we will look at what tiny forests are, how they work, why cities are investing in them, and what challenges they face. As you listen, try to notice useful vocabulary related to environment, city planning, and community projects. Let's start with a simple question. What exactly is a tiny forest? A tiny forest is a small, carefully designed patch of woodland planted in an urban or suburban area. It usually follows a specific method developed by a Japanese botanist named Akira Miyawaki. The main idea is to plant many different native tree and shrub species very close together on a small plot of land, often between 100 and 300 square meters. This might sound chaotic. Why would anyone plant trees so close together? In traditional forestry, trees are often spaced out to give each one room to grow. But the Miyawaki method imitates the natural growth of a young forest where plants compete for light, water, and nutrients. This competition actually makes them grow faster and stronger. Because of this, tiny forests can develop surprisingly quickly. In just 3 years, what was once a bare piece of land can become a dense, multi-layered mini forest with tall trees, bushes, ground plants, and a growing number of insects and birds. Now, you might wonder, why do cities need tiny forests at all? Most cities already have parks, gardens, and street trees. Isn't that enough? In many cases, traditional parks are mostly open grass with a few isolated trees and some flower beds. These spaces are pleasant, but from an ecological point of view, they are quite simple. They usually don't support a wide range of animal and plant life, especially when the grass is cut very short and the plants are not native to the region. Tiny forests, on the other hand, are deliberately designed to be wild, complex, and self-sustaining. They focus on native species, which are plants that naturally belong in that local area and have evolved together with local insects, birds, and other animals. This makes tiny forests powerful hotspots for biodiversity, even though they are small. Let's imagine a typical tiny forest in a European city. It might be located between an apartment building and a busy road, on a piece of land that used to be neglected, full of rubbish and invasive weeds. A local environmental group, together with the city council, decides to transform this wasted space into a tiny forest. First, they test the soil to understand its quality. Often, city soil is compacted, polluted, or lacking in nutrients. To fix this, volunteers dig the ground deeply, add organic material like compost, and loosen the soil so that roots can grow easily. This preparation phase is crucial. Without it, the forest will not thrive. Next, they select a mix of 20 to 40 native species. For example, they might combine fast-growing pioneer trees with slower, longer-living species. They also include shrubs and ground cover plants. The aim is to create several layers of vegetation, just like in a natural forest. Then comes the intense planting day. Community volunteers, including school children and local residents, come together to put hundreds of young plants into the ground. In a typical tiny forest, you might find 3 to 5 saplings planted in each square meter. That is much denser than a normal garden or park. For the first 2 or 3 years, the forest needs regular care. People water the plants in dry periods, remove aggressive weeds, and sometimes replace trees that do not survive. However, once the forest is well established, the idea is that it should manage itself with minimal human help. Now, let's look at the benefits of these miniature forests. One obvious advantage is biodiversity. Even a tiny patch of native woodland can attract a surprising variety of birds, insects, and small mammals. In some projects, researchers have recorded dozens of new species appearing within just a few years. For example, certain butterflies and bees quickly move in because they recognize their favorite plants. Birds arrive to feed on insects and berries. Gradually, the forest becomes a living laboratory for urban wildlife. Another major benefit is climate regulation. Many cities struggle with the so-called urban heat island effect, where buildings, roads, and pavements absorb and release heat, making urban areas several degrees warmer than the surrounding countryside. Tiny forests help cool the air by providing shade and by releasing water vapor through their leaves. Although one small forest cannot change an entire city's temperature, a network of many tiny forests can make a noticeable difference at the local level. Tiny forests also help manage rainwater. In modern cities, heavy rain can quickly overload drainage systems and cause flooding. Because the soil in a tiny forest is loose and rich in organic matter, it can absorb and hold large amounts of water. The roots of trees and plants create channels in the ground, allowing water to sink deep instead of running off the surface. This reduces pressure on drains and lowers the risk of floods. There is another, less visible benefit: carbon storage. Trees capture carbon dioxide from the air and lock it inside their trunks, branches, and roots. Although tiny forests are small compared with large natural forests, they can store more carbon per square meter than ordinary urban green spaces simply because they are so dense. But perhaps the most interesting advantage has nothing to do with numbers or measurements. Tiny forests can transform how people feel in their neighborhood. Imagine living in a crowded district, surrounded by traffic and concrete. Suddenly, on the corner of your street, a group of volunteers plants a mini forest. At first, it just looks like a messy patch of sticks. However, within a year, you can already see green walls forming. Birds start visiting. Children play around the trees and learn their names. Neighbors meet at the forest to join citizen science projects, such as counting butterflies or tracking temperatures. In this way, tiny forests become social spaces as well as ecological ones. They give residents a sense of ownership and pride. They also offer opportunities for environmental education. Many schools visit local tiny forests so that students can see real ecosystems in action instead of only reading about them in textbooks. Of course, tiny forests are not a magic solution. They face several challenges and criticisms. One issue is land. Even though tiny forests require very little space, it is still difficult to find available plots in dense urban areas. Vacant land often has competing uses. It could become a car park, a new building, or a road extension. Convincing city planners and property owners to dedicate land to a wild-looking forest can be challenging. Another problem is maintenance. While supporters like to say that these forests are self-sustaining, in reality, they need careful attention during the first years. If volunteers lose motivation or if funding disappears, young trees may suffer from drought, vandalism, or neglect. Some critics argue that the scientific evidence for tiny forests is still limited. They point out that many projects are quite new, so we do not yet know how they will look or function after 20 or 30 years. Will they continue to provide high levels of biodiversity? Will they become too dense? Or dominated by just a few strong species? Long-term studies are still in progress. There is also a debate about scale. Tiny forests are powerful symbols, but they cannot replace large natural forests or major climate action. Some environmentalists worry that governments might use them for greenwashing, which means pretending to be environmentally responsible while avoiding more difficult decisions, such as reducing emissions or protecting big natural areas. Despite these concerns, the movement is spreading quickly. Tiny forests have appeared in countries such as the Netherlands, India, the United Kingdom, France, Brazil, and many more. In some cities, local councils now include tiny forests in their official climate adaptation strategies. Another interesting trend is the involvement of companies. Some businesses sponsor tiny forests near their offices, partly as a way to improve their public image, and partly to give employees a greener, more pleasant environment. Workers may take part in planting days and then enjoy walking past the forest during their lunch breaks. For language learners, this topic offers a lot of rich vocabulary and useful structures. Let's highlight a few phrases and expressions from today's episode that you might want to notice. You heard terms like biodiversity hotspot, urban heat island, invasive weeds, citizen science, greenwashing, and climate adaptation strategy. These are all examples of advanced, domain specific vocabulary that can help you talk about environmental issues with more precision. You also heard verbs like imitate, transform, absorb, overload, and sustain, and adjectives like dense, neglected, self sustaining, and competing. These words often appear in academic articles or news reports related to nature and cities. As a listening activity, you could pause now and try to summarize the main points of this episode in your own words. For example, you could answer these questions orally or write short notes. What is a tiny forest and how is it different from a normal park? What are at least 3 benefits of tiny forests for cities and residents? What challenges and criticisms does the tiny forest movement face? By doing this, you will not only improve your listening comprehension, but also practice organizing complex information at a C1 level. Before we finish, let's take a moment to imagine the future. If you look at a satellite image of most big cities today, you see a sea of gray, rooftops, roads, parking lots, and industrial zones. There are parks, of course, but they are often separated by long distances. Now imagine that within this gray sea, thousands of small green islands appear. Each island is a tiny forest, loud with insects in summer, colorful in autumn, and calm in winter. Children grow up recognizing local tree species, not just playing with smartphones. Office workers eat their lunch in the shade of young oaks and maples. Elderly residents enjoy watching birds and listening to the wind in the leaves, only a few steps from their front doors. Will this vision become reality in every city? Probably not. But tiny forests show us that even very small spaces can be transformed when people cooperate. They also remind us that nature does not have to be far away or reserved for weekends in the countryside. It can live right outside our windows, if we choose to make room for it. As you go about your day, you might want to look at your own environment with fresh eyes. Is there a forgotten corner near your home, school, or workplace that could become something greener? Could a simple idea, like a small forest, change the feel of your neighborhood? You have been listening to Kuma English Listening Hub. This episode aimed to help you practice advanced English while learning about an innovative and inspiring urban nature project. If you want to continue practicing, you can listen again and focus on different aspects each time. One time, you might pay attention to vocabulary. Another time, you could listen for signal words and linking expressions such as on the other hand, in reality, or as a result. Noticing these patterns will help you sound more natural and organized when you speak. Thank you for joining me today. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep looking for small forests of knowledge in your everyday life. See you in the next episode.